When I was 5, my father died, and my mother ran away on the day of his funeral, remarrying a widower in the next village. We, 3 siblings, were dumped on our uncle's family. Not long after, our uncle also died. My mother refused to acknowledge us, ominous stars. Anyone who raises you shall be cursed. Stay away from me, bad luck to the end. Our aunt, hands on her hips, scolded my mother all day long, pointing at us 3, shouting about debt-collecting ghosts. From that day on, the villagers secretly called us ominous stars, saying that we would surely bring death to our aunt sooner or later. The day my father died of ascites, my mother cried all night. After his funeral, we 3 siblings couldn't find her anywhere. We went hungry for 3 days, and then a stranger appeared. He gave each of us a piece of bread, saying he was going to take us to our mother. It was then that our uncle appeared, swinging his hoe menacingly at the man's head. "You dare to kidnap children from the Han family, I'll kill you." I later found out that the man was a scoundrel from our village who specialized in child trafficking. He had had his eyes on us 3 because our mother had remarried and left us. Afterwards, our aunt would always scare us with this story. "If you don't behave, I'll let the kidnapper sell you." And she would always use this incident to prove a point: your uncle saved your lives. Otherwise, you would have been inhumanly treated. When you grow up, remember to be filial to us, understand? My uncle and aunt originally had 4 children, with the youngest still in my aunt's womb. Now they had to feed 3 more mouths. Trying to raise 7 children, their household became strained. To support the family, my uncle went out to do odd jobs, leaving all the farm work to my aunt. She was always pulling a long face then, calling us debt-collecting ghosts instead of using our names. She vented her anger in the kitchen, chopping vegetables so forcefully you could hear the bangs. My cousins were at school in the county and couldn't help at home. My older brother was a troublemaker, always playing with my younger brother on the roof, not helping with chores. Back then, everything fell on my aunt. Looking back, her temper was understandable. I couldn't behave like my older and younger brothers, because people in the village would always say, "Her father's dead, her mother's gone, and Xianxia is quite pretty. Her aunt must be planning to sell her for being a child bride." I knew what a child bride meant: working harder than a mule, eating less than a chicken, and living worse than pigs and dogs. I didn't want that life, so I dared not eat too much and worked tirelessly to help my aunt every day. At least if she found me useful, she wouldn't consider selling me. I dug wild vegetables, collected coal, and stood on a small stool to make porridge for the family. I washed our clothes, and when I fell repeatedly fetching water, I bore the bruises without making a sound. My uncle was seldom at home, but each time he came back, he would pat my head gently, saying in a warm voice, "Our Xianxia understands things the best, caring for her aunt." Then he'd produce a small toy from behind his back to give to me, a grasshopper made of straw or a crown made from willow branches. They were the most interesting toys of my childhood. My aunt would always shoot a glare at my uncle and me. "If you have the time to make toys, you should come back home earlier to help me make paper boxes. Hanxing is already 7 years old and hasn't started school yet. Xianxia should start school next year. We suddenly have 2 more tuition fees to pay. Where can we get the money?" I bowed my head low, trembling with fear. I wished I could disappear into the ground and be out of sight. At night, while my uncle and aunt were making paper boxes, I went to join them, only to be chased away by my aunt. "Shoo away. Can we sell the boxes you make? You're wasting these materials." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I bit my lip, unsure whether to stay or leave. My uncle consoled, "Don't take it out on Xianxia, she's just a child." He put me to bed, tucked me in, and whispered, "Your aunt has a bad mouth but a good heart. She's just being overprotective of you. Night work hurts the eyes, and Xianxia's eyes need to be safe for future studying and writing." I fell into a deep sleep, but in the middle of the night I heard my aunt sobbing under the quilt. "We still need a few hundred. The village secretary said that since the children's mother is still alive, we can't apply for orphan subsidies for them." "Where do you expect me to get the money?" Uncle gently comforted her. "As long as I'm here, I'll never let you and the kids starve. Tomorrow I will go to the county town to look for work. Don't cry. The kids are born of Wangguizi, the mother's name. She should be responsible for the expenditure." "How come?" "It's okay. All the kids are of our Han family. Big brother supported me for studying and even my wedding." "Helping to raise his children is only ideal and logical," Uncle replied. The following day, before dawn, Uncle left for the county town and successfully found work through a connection. I dedicated myself to helping Aunt even more as she grew heavier with a swelling belly, beginning to struggle with moving around. Despite this, she took good care of all 7 children. As Aunt's delivery was approaching, our financial situation had not much improved. Aunt was so worried that she even considered selling blood. Just at this moment, news came that my mother was pregnant. Villagers gossiped in vivid detail, claiming that my mother was carrying a boy. Her new husband, elated, bought her a pair of gold earrings. My aunt sat alone for a whole night and decided to take us 3 to find our mother the following day. When we saw our mother again, she looked like a completely different person. She was clear-skinned, rosy, and well-dressed with her brand-new dress. The golden earrings on her ears were dazzling. She stood there with her slightly bulging belly and spat, "Damn Han family, consuming everything and give nothing back. These 3 are Hans, I've remarried now, why should I pay?" Aunt retorted, "You abandon your own flesh and blood, Wang Guizi, just you wait, your son may be born without an asshole. Anyway, we can't afford to raise them. The children are here. Do with them what you will." Aunt pretended to leave and I panicked, bursting into tears, drawing the attention of villager onlookers. My younger brother, seeing me crying, started to cry too. Only my older brother ran to hug our mother. Aunt seized the chance to make a scene, sobbing and complaining bitterly about my mother. The neighbors whispered amongst themselves, and my mother looked awkward. "Enough, let's talk inside." She led us into the yard and after glancing around she murmured to my aunt, "I don't have the money, it's all in the hands of my husband. But I can keep one of them, I'll raise them." Hope flared up in our eyes, both nervous and expectant. We all wanted to be the one chosen by our mother. Aunt sneered, "After all, they are your flesh and blood. You can't raise another's child as naturally as your own. Your mom is overjoyed the moment she opens her mouth. Just think about who threw you away like garbage." Hearing this, my mother's face turned pale and green. She coughed and pointed at me. "Jia is a girl. Sooner or later, she will marry and leave. She can't carry on the Han family line, come with me." I felt as if countless fireworks had burst open in my heart. I was going to have a mother again. Just as I stretched out my little hand and was about to run towards her, someone grabbed the collar of my back fiercely. Aunt was furious, pointing at my mother and cursing, "Wang Guizi, you are a beast. Don't think that I don't know what you are plotting. None of these children will stay with you. Even if I have to beg, I, Zhang Shumai, can raise them." My mother rolled her eyes. "If you're so defiant, then don't come to me. Now that you've said it, don't regret it." It was only after Aunt spat several times that she took us 3 back home. I looked back every few steps, my mouth pouted, but I could neither see my mother running after us nor dare cry. My aunt held me tight, as if afraid I'd run back. Her mouth never stopped moving. "Do you think Wang Guizi wanted you because she cares about you? Don't daydream. She wants to sell you to be someone's child bride. Don't think I'm lying. The whole village knows it and several families have even approached her to buy you." My aunt kept prattling on, but the evening breeze of the summer dusk hit my eyes and made them sour and stingy. I finally started crying, but I couldn't afford to grieve for long as Aunt gave birth that night. Basins of blood-mixed water were carried out of the house. I sat beneath the window, palms together, silently praying for her to the moon. The village doctor said Aunt had given birth prematurely. The villagers said that if it weren't for us 3, my aunt wouldn't have been angered by my mother and almost died along with the baby. Uncle named my cousin Hanfu, saying that he brought fortune to the family upon birth. Because the village secretary told my uncle, although we 3 siblings couldn't get the orphan subsidy, we got special hardship allowances. My brother and I were also selected by the aid organization as aid recipients, receiving scholarships per academic year. In short, our tuition was taken care of and our family's living conditions improved significantly. I learned to cook noodles from the grandma next door and managed to poach an egg in the noodles for my aunt. After a few slurps, she finished it and commented, "At least you have conscience. Here, have this." She left the egg for me. Her words may be harsh, but her heart is kind. My father had once told me that to truly see a person, you must look at their heart. I may have been young, but I could differentiate who's good and who's bad. The year I started school, my eldest cousin graduated from vocational high school and went to work in a factory in the south, sending back some money now and then. Aunt kept all this money. "We have enough for our needs at home. This money will be saved for eldest to marry." Uncle got a job at a transport company in the county, and life had been getting better day by day. When I was in grade 3, my female cousin got into a key high school in the city with top scores, and my second brother also started attending middle school. This should be the happiest and most blessed times for my aunt. She would tell anyone she met, the more people, the more luck. It's indeed tiring to raise them, but isn't hardship always followed by happiness in the end? Especially when my eldest cousin called to say that he had a girlfriend. My aunt's face softened with joy and love in her eyes. That sounds good. Bring her home for New Year's, and if everything goes well, we can arrange the wedding. The year I progressed to middle school, my elder cousin finally brought his girlfriend home for the new year. She was a delicate and tender girl from the south, but her hands too were rough. Aunt was overjoyed, pulling her in and singing praises. However, when the topic of betrothal gifts came up, the southern girl uncomfortably fiddled with her fingers, seemingly hesitant to speak. My older cousin nervously rubbed his legs and said, "Fang Fang's family said they want 66,000 yuans for good luck." As I eavesdropped from the doorway, my heart skipped a beat. At that time, for a poor and backward county like ours, that amount was considered substantial. Some people couldn't save that much money their whole lives. Aunt didn't immediately agree. "I can't make a decision alone. Let's wait for your dad to come back from the county." That night, I hid in the bed and saw Aunt take out the household's bankbook and count the money. School fees need to be paid for a few children when school starts soon, and there will be a big expense when your elder cousin goes to university after her college entrance examination this year. What should we do? I pushed all my hoarded New Year's money, mostly comprised of half a yuan and 1 yuan notes, into my aunt's hands. Aunt scolded me. "Can this family lack your little money? Get yourself a practice book and don't come home with a score of 60 again." She said in words that we were not lacking, but she sighed for 3 days. It was not until the 4th day that Uncle came home for the Lunar New Year's Eve. "Don't worry, your man is now capable of earning a lot," Uncle decided on the marriage directly. He was valued by the boss because the transport company was doing well now and Uncle was more diligent than others, driving more and resting less. My future sister-in-law happily called her family to report this news. Then the whole family gathered around the table to eat in festive mood. It was the happiest year I have spent. Though being young, I did not know how calm it can be before a storm. In the blink of an eye, it was the college entrance examination day, and Aunt couldn't eat or sleep out of nervousness. Once she passes the exam, she can fly out of these huge mountains, see the outside world, and become a strong woman. You kids should pray. Well, if your sister becomes successful in the future, she can help you all too. My cousin scored 621 and got into a top-tier university. Aunt was so happy that she strolled around the whole village. "Zhang, what's for eats? My daughter got 621. Li, what's up? My daughter got 621. In less than an hour, the whole village knew about my cousin's score. Finally, Aunt came to the village official and called Uncle to share this joy. "Danny scored 621. She can go to a top-tier university. You come back soon." "Ah, okay, don't chat anymore. You should drive first." No one thought that this would be the last thing Aunt said to Uncle. Uncle died. He was driving tired and overloaded. When he tried to avoid the truck in front, he was too fast to react and crashed into the back of a large truck. Both vehicles were heavy-duty trucks. The one in front was carrying inflammables. The petrol leaked immediately, and a fire started in seconds. Both drivers did not survive. Unfortunately, Uncle's boss, in order to save costs, did not purchase insurance, and this accident was entirely Uncle's fault. The compensation was an astronomical figure. The boss paid more than half and we had to pay the rest. Aunt emptied her savings, borrowed from the neighbors, but still fell short by tens of thousands. That damn boss Gao, if he hadn't forced old Han to overload, it wouldn't have. At that point, I learned that Uncle's ability to earn money was a game played with his life. He drove around the clock, slept less, carried more goods, all to earn more profit. But who could blame anyone for what happened? Misfortune is the accumulation of unexpected events and necessities that cannot be helped. It was already impossible to turn back. Can't blame anyone else. We were at fault. Oh dear Han, you paid for this mistake with your life. What are we going to do now, as widows and orphans? Aunt wept in the memorial hall. People tried to comfort her, but their words seemed feeble. They could only sigh helplessly. Late at night, I crept over to Aunt, took out half a piece of cake, and pleaded with tears, "Auntie, please have something to eat, I beg you. I had already lost my father, uncle, and mother. If Aunt was gone as well." As I coaxed her, I started sobbing, my tears and snot dirtying the cake. But Aunt, who had been drained of all energy, suddenly seemed to come back to life. She snatched the cake, forced herself to wolf it down, and ate it all, tears and all. People cannot be brought back from death. I, Zhang Shumai, still have to hold up this family. The children are all counting on me. I cannot collapse. If the money isn't enough, I learn it. As long as you're alive, there's hope. Just overnight, Aunt became that strong, outspoken woman again with the foul mouth. Over the next few days, the women of the village came one after another to visit Aunt. But they did not come with good intentions, trying to persuade Aunt to sell my cousin and use the bride price. I learned from Aunt and, in my heart, silently spat at them. But this was how the older generation did things. They too had been sold by their families in the same manner. I couldn't help but worry for my cousin. Aunt, who was rolling flour dough at the time, suddenly raised the rolling pin and shouted, "Get out!" Even if I had to sell my blood or kidney, Zhang Shumai would never sell her daughter. The women were scolded away by Aunt one by one, accusing her of being ungrateful. To my surprise, my mother also showed up, echoing their sentiments. Out of the past kinship we shared, and for your sake, I pulled some strings to arrange a match. Her distant relative owns a small storefront in the city. He can be considered a boss in his own right. Although he is 10 years older than Danny, it's said that older men are more caring. He does have a disability in his left leg, but he's healthy overall, a retired soldier with good character. The betrothal gift, you would be scared if I told you, a total of 128,000 yuans. My mom waited expectantly for Aunt to agree, but Aunt just stared at my mom without saying a word. I saw her clench and unclench her fist, and then suddenly, she swung her fist at my mother's face. Bah! You damn Wang Guizi, you couldn't get your hands on Xianxia, so now you're setting sights on my Danny. I'll tear your rotten mouth apart, knock out your front teeth. The commotion was so loud that many villagers came to watch. My mother scratched a deep mark on Aunt's face, and I immediately rushed forward and dragged my mother away. My mother kicked me, as light as if she was kicking cotton. You brat, siding with outsiders against your own mother. May heaven strike you down. Eventually, Aunt managed to separate from her, pointing at my mother and saying, "If you really want to help me, take your own flesh and blood back home and raise them. With my family in this state, they will only suffer if they stay with me." After hearing this, my mother lost her temper and slapped me, spinning me around. "Cursed your father, cursed your uncle, cursed your cousin's wedding off, cursed your cousin from going to school. Cursed stars, whoever raises you will have bad luck. Keep away from me, it's bad luck all the way. Go find your aunt, I am remarried now, I can't afford to raise you." She ran away after speaking, but the onlookers seemed to be enlightened, whispering to each other. "It's exactly like Wang Guizi said, he cursed his whole family, he is indeed a cursed star." After she got remarried, she became like a rich lady. Her luck must have turned for the better after away from the curse. Stay away, don't catch the bad luck. Aunt picked up a broom and swung it at the crowd. All of you are big-mouthed, your words are dirtier than your shit. You're the cursed star, your whole family are the cursed stars. May you have cursed husbands, cursed children, and cursed parents. Whoever says it again, I'll hit them each time I see them until their own mother doesn't recognize them. Because of Aunt's explosion, the crowd dispersed. She stuck the broom into the ground, pointed at me and said, "Are you stupid? Why did you rush up to get hit when I was fighting with her? When she hit you, can't you duck? Do you like being hit by your own mother? You like her so much, but she doesn't want you. She even called you a cursed star. I must be unlucky to be raising you debt-collecting ghosts. Why are you crying? Go inside the house and I'll boil you an egg to put on your face." As the days counted down to the start of school term, our tuition fees were still a concern. Anne sat in front of Uncle's photo for a night and decided to go into town to sell blood the next day. She said that if they drew a bit more blood, she could make 2,000 yuan. But the first one to bring money home was my cousin, with a bank book of exactly 150,000. Along with it was a marriage certificate. She had married the retired serviceman who was 10 years older than her that my mother spoke about. The betrothal gift was not 128,000, but 150,000. The missing 22,000 was my mother's intended kickback. She intended to exploit this battered family even though she had remarried. Aunt fainted when she got the news. When she woke up, she both cursed and cried, hitting my cousin with a broom. But the broom merely swept dust off of cousin's thick cotton clothes. Her hits were not as fierce as they seemed. "What about your university? What about your future? You've endured more than 10 years, and you were finally going to leave these mountains, but you cut off your own path. You are worth far more than this 15,000. If even the marriage certificate is torn, oh. My cousin knelt in front of Aunt, embracing her and saying, Mum, you're selling your blood. Even if you drained yourself, it wouldn't be enough. You and Dad raised me. Now the only one who can help the family is me. It's okay if I can't continue studying. Hanjia and Hanfu still have a chance. Our family is not only about having one university student. That night, the house was overwhelmed with sobbing. My cousin had known her husband for a while. His shop was near her university. Therefore, she was able to deduce his identity from the snippets of my mother's conversation. The 150,000 filled the compensation gap, paid for our tuition fees, and the rest went as a betrothal gift from my eldest cousin. In fact, the betrothal gift was still lacking by 10,000, which my cousin-in-law made up for with her savings over the years. Her family called off the wedding when they found out about our family's troubles. But she insisted, gave her family almost 70,000 yuan, and immediately got married to my cousin. She said the money was a betrothal gift from her brother, and she was no different from the goods at home. Over the years, she has been working outside to support her family, like carrying a vampire on her back. Now, she didn't want to carry it anymore. Aunt prepared a table of dishes and took out the 1,000 yuan from selling her blood to give them. This was the wedding banquet for my eldest cousin and his wife. It was modest, but it was the best that Aunt could give at the time. The next day, my cousin and his wife returned to the south to continue working, and we started school. My second cousin went to a vocational school. My brother and I went to a junior high school in the county, and the two younger brothers were still in primary school. Aunt couldn't go out to work like Uncle. She could only farm at home. My eldest cousin and my female cousin will occasionally send money back, and we all live frugally. I only ate the cheapest buns at school, with the cafeteria's free soup, and divided one bun into 2 meals, having only soup for dinner. But even so, the money was never enough. My younger cousin fell ill with severe anemia, and most of the money at home was used for his treatment. Aunt went to the county to sell blood several times again, until she fainted and was sent home, and we found out. With 2 people sick at home, my second brother impulsively decided to drop out of school and came home. If Aunt's own son had dropped out of school, how could I have the face to continue my studies? Prior to the weekend break at school, the teacher handed out a list of fees, including printing fees, exercise book payments, and so on. The teacher reminded us, bring money to pay on Monday. For others, this might have been inconsequential. But for me, it was the crushing boulder that weighed down on our house. Students streamed out of the school gate, and I was the last to leave. While they all hurried home, I took a detour. Near the school was a small factory that hired workers regardless of age, paying 3 cents apiece. I mixed in with a bunch of adults and worked laboriously. But as I was young with slow hands and feet, what others could complete in an hour often took me 2. The workshop director continually rushed me, pressuring me to work overtime to meet production deadlines. You're slower than embroidery. If you continue this pace, get lost. It was common for me to work until 2 or 3 in the morning. When I was extremely tired, I would sleep on the cardboard in the workshop. The boss was exploitative and often deducted from our calculated wages. Many workers quarreled fiercely for a few cents. I was no different, but I didn't even have the power to argue, so most of my wages were deducted. The noise of the production line was deafening. The room was always filled with dust and sharp arguments from time to time. Everyone else had something to look forward to. Some were saving to buy a house. Some were trying to afford treatment for their relatives, and others were supporting their children's education. Once they had earned enough, they would leave this place. But I couldn't do that. I could not escape from these days, and they trapped me like cement. My cousin, who got into university, eventually dropped out and got married. Compared to her, what was I going through? Slap. Aunt slapped me hard, the sting burning on my cheek. While she was always sharp with her words, she had never laid a hand on me before. This was the first time she hit me. Clearly she was beyond furious. Skipping school to work, you really have guts. Does our home lack that little money? If you really want to earn, go back to studying properly, go to university and earn big money. I knelt beside her crying, seeing her purple lips trembling with anger because of me. Aunt, both my elder sister and second brother have dropped out of school. I also want to help the family. She was even angrier. If you want to help like this, go to your own mother. I don't need you. I clung to her legs for dear life, smearing her with my tears, shaking my head frantically. Aunt, please don't drive me away. I beg you, I won't go anywhere else, I'll stay by your side. She continued to curse at me to get out, but gradually her voice lowered. Suddenly she squatted down, cried her heart out with me. Xianxia, my silly boy, studying is the only way out, only that way will you live up to your father and your uncle. The family has already caused 2 children to drop out of school, there can't be any more. Even if it means selling everything, you have to study, understand? Continue studying for your sister and your brother. She wiped my tears with her coarse thumb. Carve out your own piece of sky. The small factory was investigated, and the unscrupulous boss was arrested. It was my teacher who found out I had not been in school for a long time, gathered clues from my classmates, and found the small factory. Aunt handed me back to my teacher. On the way back to school, the teacher worked out some sums for me. 3 cents apiece, half of your salary is exploited. You earn 800 yuan a month. Even if you work for 30 years, you will only earn 800 a month. But going to university is different. A university student can earn 40 yuan for an hour of private tutoring. A fresh graduate has an average monthly wage of 4,000 with an annual pay rise. Now, how would you choose? No one had ever told me this before. Of course I want to earn money. But teacher, I can't even afford the tuition now. I don't have a choice. She told me firm conviction. Going to school is a student's responsibility and obligation. Look at what this is. She handed me a form with signatures and seals. It was an application to waive my tuition. You sign, give it to me, and it will be effective immediately. The date was the last time I returned to school. It turned out they had done everything in silence. I felt a prickling in my nose and bowed deeply to my teacher. Half a month after I returned to school, my mother sneaked in to see me. As soon as she saw me, she was cursing. You're silly. Going to work in those kinds of small factories. You don't even know the method of making money. You deserve to suffer. Only your real mother can think for you. She said with satisfaction, I've arranged a good marriage for you. The man is 26 and just lost his wife. The betrothal gift can be 100,000. I'll share it half and half with you. This can absolutely make a fortune. It's all set. You go live there first, cultivate feelings. They'll definitely treat you like an ancestor. She laughed flamboyantly, causing me to grind my teeth in anger. So many years have passed, and she still thought about selling me off as a child bride. In her eyes, I was just an object to be traded for money. I gritted my teeth and said, Mother, I'm not of age yet. My teacher said this is against the law. Also, I want to go to university, not get married. My mother laughed. You came from me. Don't I know what you're like? You're so dense, let alone university. You can't even get into high school. I pushed her away and roared, if I don't get in, I'll go to work. You left when I was 5. You haven't taken care of me for a day in 8 years. When I make money in the future, it will be to honor my aunt. It has nothing to do with you. My mother raised her hand to hit me, but I turned around and ran into my school, and the security guard stopped her. From that moment on, I secretly vowed to make something of my education. I was originally poor in academics and missed a long period of classes, so my grades were at the bottom of the class. But the seed of going to university and changing my fate had taken root in my heart. I had to do it. I asked the head teacher to give me private extra lessons. Some classmates were resentful of this and isolated me. If it were before, I would be sensitive and feel inferior. But now I had no energy to think about that. The opportunity to go to school was fought for by my teacher. What right did I have to feel sentimental? If no one paid me any attention, I would be by myself. I would recite textbooks while eating, when using the bathroom, and during the frantic sessions of problem-solving during breaks. Even after lights out, I cherished every second. In the cold winters, when others were sleeping soundly, I would study under the bathroom light, wrapped up in a cotton coat. When it was too cold, I'd fill up a hot water bottle and keep it on my body, or I would drink hot water. Once, the class prefect saw me studying at night. She looked at me with a little disdain, but also with shock. In the end, she gave me her notes. Remember to return it to me tomorrow morning. Like a thirsty sponge, I kept absorbing knowledge in the sea of learning. After 3 years of studying like this, I went from being one of the last in rank to being in the top 5 in my grade. On graduation day, the class prefect, as an exemplary student, specially mentioned me during her speech. I have a secret buried in my heart. In the first year, I regarded Xianxia, who ranked last in class, as my role model. I have never seen such a hard-working girl. During countless cold nights, while we were in our warm beds, she studied late into the night in the hallway. There are over 1,000 students in the grade. If it were me, I would never have had the confidence to overcome this mountain of students. But she did it. I think it must have been very difficult, something I can't comprehend even if I tried. She is my rival, my role model, and should be the goal of every one of us. The applause in the hall was thunderous. This was the first time I had felt respect from others. It turns out, besides bringing money, knowledge could also bring me pride. I was accepted into #1 high school, the best high school in the province. Aunt clapped her hands together and thanked all the gods she knew joyfully. At night, I heard her secretly whispering to my uncle's memorial tablet, "Please watch over Xianxia from there and let our ancestral tomb spew more green smoke. Bless our Xianxia all the way through to university and also bless our family with peace." In places I could not see, Aunt loved me in her own clumsy and simple way. On the day of high school registration, the village head waited early at my door and wanted to send me to school with Aunt. He held an envelope in his hand. "Gia, give this certificate to the school to apply for a fee waiver. Everyone in our village is not rich, and this is all we can do for you. Don't despise it." My eyes were already moist. "Thank you, Uncle Zhang, thank you." My voice choked with more words. In the envelope was a stack of money, gathered by the villagers, all in 5s and 10s. This was the best thing they could give. On the way, Aunt talked non-stop, nervously repeating the same thoughts over and over again. "Don't save money, just eat whatever you want. Good health is necessary for good results. Call home if anything happens. Don't bottle things up or I'll give you a good scolding. All right, go in quickly, study hard and don't bring dishonor to the Han family." On the first day of school, the head teacher called me into her office. She handed me a form. "In our school, we have scholarships. This is the application form." The scholarship was substantial, but there was one condition. I had to participate in various competitions on behalf of the school. Compared to my classmates, who have been competing all over the country since primary school, I felt a world apart. However, I still wanted to give it a shot. It was not easy for Aunt to support our family. During middle school, my older cousin and cousin sister could occasionally help. But now that they each had their own children, there wasn't much they could help with financially. My cousin's health was not good, so my aunt had to constantly tighten her belt to make ends meet. I often saw her sneak a bite or two of food and then retreat outside to drink cold water. She lied to us, saying I'm old, eating too much makes me uncomfortable. To outsiders, how much can one save from a meal? But in our family, it added up to a few days of medicine money for my cousin each month. Having a full meal was the thing I most wanted to help my aunt with at the moment. Therefore, I desperately needed this scholarship. The school opened a competition class, and it was only when I got in that I truly realized the gap between people. Many people had already studied one-on-one with private tutors, and some smarter ones had bought the textbooks and studied by themselves. The teacher's pace was very fast, just skimming over things because most people said they already knew it. But I didn't. The speed they could easily go ahead was beyond the reach of this dull cow, even after months of late-night cramming. The competition class was a cruel elimination system, and those who could represent the school in the competition were all top students. For the first major competition, I didn't even qualify to register, and the teacher wasn't going to slow down for me. This was the most painful and tortuous period of my life. The confidence I built in middle school crumbled into dust. I cried and studied late into the night, gritting my teeth and writing down answers, but it was still ineffective. I could barely keep up with regular coursework, let alone a competition. "You're going the wrong way," my cousin, who was heavily pregnant, said to me. "If you try to master everything, you won't make it anywhere." She was pregnant again and hadn't seen me for a long time. Upon seeing me looking as gaunt as a skeleton, she was taken aback. "You have to focus your energy on one subject after the division of arts and sciences in the second year of high school. As for the rest, just make sure to pass." As for the competition, my cousin never participated in a competition, but one of her classmates got a special admission to Tsinghua or Peking University through a competition. The fighting spirit ignited once again in my disoriented eyes. I realized that, apart from getting a scholarship, the competition also served as the key to the university I yearned for. The heavy and obscure competition book seems to have been plated with gold, opening a steep and thorny path for me. I decided to brave the thorns and delve into the book until dawn. But that night, I focused on the sciences, barely touching upon the humanities. After a semester, my science grades were among the best, but my overall ranking was held back due to the humanities. My biological mother somehow heard about this and came to our village to gossip. I told you long ago that she's bad luck. You didn't believe me, insisting on sending her to high school. Now she has made a fool of herself in the city, and the tuition fees have been wasted. I think she should find a decent family and get married early. At least that would be helpful. People in the village also chimed in. Maybe Zhang Shumai has a thing with the village officials. Otherwise, why would she have mobilized us to pool money for tuition? Just consider it spending money to send away the poor ghost. Don't let her haunt our door. I heard that widow Zhang spent a lot of money to hire a tutor for her. Indeed, I was taking additional classes, not with a pricey tutor hired by my aunt, but with my cousin's classmate who had won a competition. So, the entire holiday, I didn't stay at home, but lived with my cousin in the county town. I got up at 4 o'clock every morning to help my cousin's family while studying competition courses. I was cramming knowledge while making breakfast, solving problems while helping my brother-in-law mind the shop in the morning, and going home to study late into the night after the afternoon class. Sometimes when my cousin was tired and confused, she would ask me how many times the baby had been fed in the middle of the night because she saw me always awake. When Aunt came to my cousin's house, she often scolded me, "You don't sleep all day, even your hair has fallen out from exhaustion. If you keep on like this, I'm going to burn paper money for you next year." Having lived with her for so many years, I know well that Aunt has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She was worried about me. The effects of the extra classes were significant in the new academic year. I passed the selection and participated in the competition with my school. As a rookie, my performance was merely average. But once I mastered the right method, I entered a positive cycle, especially after the division into arts and sciences. My advantage suddenly stood out. In the first semester of sophomore year, I began to stand out in the provincial competitions. When I progressed to the junior year, I ranked first in the provincial competition and took home a hefty scholarship. This delighted my aunt, and she talked to my uncle's photo all night. In the first semester of the senior year, I made a bold decision to focus on competition, trying to secure an early admission to university. The first place in the province gave me the opportunity to participate in national competitions, so I put more energy into the competitions. I even skipped the end-of-term exams and went directly to the provincial level for closed training. But the further I went, the harder it became, especially facing the elites from all over the country. I often felt I couldn't go on and I couldn't improve anymore. At such times, I would always think of Aunt. I thought of her standing at the door, looking out, waiting for us to come home. I thought of her taking me home while scolding my biological mother for abandoning me. I thought of her pushing the egg back into my bowl when I gave it to her in an egg noodle dish. Fate has been full of hardship and suffocation from my childhood until now. But it also opened a window for me, brought me to Aunt, and gave me maternal love. Although I always called her Aunt, I considered her my mother in my heart early on. For her not to suffer again, even if I were a saturated sponge, I'd still strive to absorb a bit more. Before setting off for the competition, my cousin and her husband brought me a large bag of items that my aunt had prepared for me. A set of new clothes, a pair of fitting sneakers, and lots of snacks. They were all my favorite foods. My biological mother didn't know, but my aunt remembered every detail. With sour eyes and a slight tremor in my lips, especially seeing a wad of money in the bag. It was a bunch of 1 yuan and 5 yuan notes that Aunt had saved from her frugal daily life. Mom said, "Beijing is not like any other place. Eat and drink what you should, spend when you need to." I wiped my tears, got on the bus, and waved goodbye to them. This is my family. Poverty cannot suppress their love for me. For them, I must achieve good results in the competition. After the competition, the string that had been pulled too tightly in me suddenly snapped. Upon returning, I fell ill off and on for quite a while. The third year of high school was a race against time, and the combination of the competition and illness resulted in less than ideal results in several simulations. There were also children from my village who went to the same school, so the rumors about me never stopped. Can she go to college? What a ludicrous claim from that bad luck family. She can barely make it to undergraduate level with her scores. I heard she went to Beijing, cohabitating with boys and girls. How could she still be innocent? I tell you what, it definitely was Widow Zhang who sneakily took her for an abortion behind our backs. It's not an illness now. She's in her confinement period. Look, it's so easy to smear a girl's reputation. With a single flick of the tongue, lies become truth. For girls like me, living in impoverished counties at the bottom of society, no matter how hard we struggle upwards, there are countless hands pulling us back into the mud. I'm just a girl about to turn 18, trembling with anger after hearing these rumors. Similar things have happened in the village before. A girl who had moved to the city for studying returned pregnant, got gossiped about by the villagers, and couldn't bear it, so she jumped into a well. But there was no child in her womb, it was a tumor. Upon hearing this, my biological mother came rushing over, making a scene in front of our house. I gave you, the Han family, a chaste daughter to raise, and what did you do? How come she comes back pregnant? Xianxia, after your confinement, come and follow me. Don't worry, I will definitely find you a good match. The dowry may not be as it was in the past, but with me around, you will definitely not be at a loss. Seeing that I didn't come out, she started to create drama, cursing the 18 generations of the Han family. There was a loud sound like a thunderbolt out of the blue from outside the house. It was my aunt's booming voice. Wang Guizi, shut your mournful mouth, or else I'll tear it apart. She chased my mother around the village with a hoe, each swing taking all her strength, cursing until her voice cracked. Let me make it clear to everyone, our Xianxia is going to represent the country for the World Championship in the future. Not gossiping around with you bunch of old hags. Whoever blabbers, I will pour the chamber potty on their kang. Aggressive and fierce, these were Aunt's lethal techniques. The setting sun fell on her, casting a long shadow on the ground. Her hair was slightly disheveled, with a hoe in hand. The broken string in me suddenly felt reconnected. My aunt is my haven, my salvation. Even if I crumble to pieces outside, as long as I can lean on her when I return home, I can survive. I quickly returned to school and immersed myself in studies. Time went by in double speed, and the college entrance exam was upon us. I did well on the first day, but just as I was about to enter the examination room on the second day, someone rushed frantically over to grab me. It was my biological mother. Something happened to your aunt. Like a bolt from the blue, everything went black before my eyes, and I fainted. My aunt had fractured a bone and was sent to emergency surgery. The smell of disinfectant in the hospital irritated my nose. My eyes reddened, and I couldn't stop tears. The operating room door was tightly shut, and Aunt hadn't come out yet. She had been malnourished for long and her health had deteriorated. Would she be able to endure the surgery? She also had anemia. What if there was a dangerous situation during surgery? My father and uncle were both dead, and now Aunt's life was hanging in the balance. It's all my fault. They were right. I'm a harbinger of doom. I've killed the whole family. Why didn't it happen to me? It should have been me. I kept telling myself to stay calm and rational, but I simply couldn't control my emotions. The one who came to tell me about the accident was my biological mother. I grabbed the collar of her dress and aggressively pushed her against the wall as if I had gone mad. Maybe I looked too much like a lunatic, glaring savagely at her. It scared her and her lips trembled. Wang Guizi, it was you, wasn't it? You laid hands on her. I'm going to call the police now and have you thrown into jail. My mother quickly begged for mercy, no longer the shrewd and aggressive woman she used to be. Gia, it's really not my fault. She pulled my hair. Look, it's all gone. I just pushed her a bit. I had no idea she was that fragile. A small bump on the floor and she fainted. Due to her malnutrition, Aunt had osteoporosis. A minor bump could easily result in a fracture. This was also what the doctor told us afterwards. But at that moment, I was enraged and slapped Wang Guizi. After I hit her, I started shaking all over. Aunt was taken out of the operating room in the afternoon. Thankfully, the surgery was successful and she was fine, just needed rest. But as soon as she woke up, she became restless and cursed my biological mother and her entire family. Wang Guizi, you jinx. Our Gia was in the middle of her college entrance exam. She has waited for so many years, suffered for so many years, all for this moment. You dragged her out of the exam room and made her pay for the medical fees. You are cutting off her life. After cursing, she wailed and cried her heart out until she fainted. My cousins and I took turns trying to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. Even after discharge from the hospital, she remained the same. My stepfather and biological mother came to apologize, but Aunt wasn't home. My second cousin and I received them. They actually started acting like gloating elders and talked about me. With utmost seriousness, my mother held my hand. Jia, your mother had no choice but to leave you in the Han family back then. My stepfather seconded. Yeah, I wasn't well off at that time either. My mother went on. Now, your stepfather and I are living comfortably. We've long wanted to take you back home. Look, you didn't get into college. Staying with your aunt just adds to her burdens. My stepfather also said, yeah, elder sister Zhang is not well. You have to understand the pains she took to raise you all these years. Mother and daughter have no overnight enemies. Guizi is your biological mother. You, as a daughter, should not hold grudges. In the future, our family will be happy and united. How nice that would be. To my surprise, they actually tried to take me away, but I threw off their hands. I knew that Wang Guizi had no bottom lines, but I didn't expect her to be shameless to this extent. I forced a smile and said, who is part of your family? Wang Guizi, you remarried. You are no longer a member of our Han family. For so many years, you've never cared about me, yet you keep thinking about selling me as a child bride. Now that I didn't get into college, you finally have an excuse to sell me off for dowry money, isn't it? Keep dreaming. Even if I have to bang my head to die, I won't leave with you. At this point, my biological mother was still pretending, play-acting, and said, a woman is supposed to get married. You are my flesh and blood. The favor of being your mother stands here. Of course, I am the one to find a husband for you. I picked up a broom, imitating my aunt, to drive them away. Wang Guizi, take your trash and buzz off. If you're so akin to your flesh and blood, why don't you take your sons in? Why me? Let me tell you, I won't get married. Don't think of making dowry money off of me. I forced them out of the house. Many spectators had gathered outside. Annoyingly, there were even some who sided with my biological mother. Chasing your mother with a broom, you'll be struck by lightning. A bad star like her ruined the Han family, yet she still has the audacity to say she won't get married. Which men would want her? She'd bring disaster to the whole family. I was so angry that my eyes turned red and my chest heaved heavily. Just as I was about to wave the broom at these people, my aunt rushed back and dragged my biological mother out. Wang Guizi, do you have no shame? Always plotting to sell your daughter. I've painstakingly raised Xianxia, and you just want to marry her off to some dying old man for good fortune. How could you even say that? You want to take her away, right? All right, then pay me back the money I spent on raising her for all these years, 150,000. My mother also got irritated. Zhang Shumai, do you think I'm stupid? It can't be that expensive. My aunt stood proudly in place, pointing at my mother's nose. This is even after giving you a discount. Our Xianxia got a first prize in the national competition. It was achieved after endless hours of extra classes. Extra classes in the city are very expensive. Now tell me, isn't it worth 150,000? My mother pushed aunt away, ready to engage. What bird use is being first in the nation? She didn't get into college. She needs to obediently get married and have children. Aunt would have been fine without hearing this, but as soon as she did, she lunged at my mother. Wang Guizi, you jinx. If it wasn't for you speaking about a matchmaking on the day of Jia's college entrance exam, would I have even been fighting with you? If we hadn't fought, I wouldn't have been hospitalized and her exam wouldn't have been delayed. This grudge, I will settle with you today. The two women started fighting frantically. You can keep cursing, but she still didn't get in. She just has to honestly get married for good fortune, my mother kept provoking aunt. The villagers, seeing the situation, urgently separated the two. Everyone knew that my aunt had struggled to raise several children over the years, and everyone was from the same village. Even though they were talking about me, they were siding with my aunt. They were all accusing my biological mother. You heartless woman, the day your husband died, you ran away, and now you are still coming back for payback. You're happy to see the Han family destroyed, aren't you? I think you are the real jinx. You haven't cared or spent a dime in more than 10 years. Why would you take the child back now? My mother was not willing to be outdone and fought back, along with my stepfather. In the midst of all the clamor, the village director came on his bicycle. What are you doing? What does it look like? A gang fight? Are you all trying to get taken to the police station? His yells silenced everyone on the spot. Then he looked at me kindly, his mouth almost splitting into a smile. Jia is amazing. Jia is a lucky star. Jia. He directly handed me the express delivery of the admission notification. Here it's the admission letter from Tsinghua University and Peking University. Not just in our village, but in our whole town and even the entire province, very few have received this. I unfolded the admission notification as everyone stared in astonishment. My mother's incredulous face is still unforgettable to me. She said, "It's fake. It must be fake. You're putting on a show." We all scoffed at her, especially Aunt. She started using the knowledge she had recently learned to enlighten everyone. Our Xianxia can get into college without the college entrance examination. Do you know what special enrollment means? She won the first prize in the national competition and was specially admitted by Tsinghua and Peking University. Pride and satisfaction appeared on my aunt's face at the same time. I've never seen her shine so bright all these years. My mother, unable to get her way, sheepishly left with my stepfather. As for me, I transformed from a jinx to the hope of the entire village, heading to Beijing with dreams in my chest. 4 years after college, I passed the postgraduate examination and stayed in Beijing to work. Perhaps I had eaten all the hardship of this life when I was a child. After graduation, my life was particularly smooth. I made it to the senior management of a company and invested in many projects. But these are not my proudest achievements. A large part of the money I earned was invested in a foundation for women and children. This organization is specifically designed to help children like me and girls like my cousin, who had to drop out of school. As for my biological mother, I heard only bits and pieces after I brought Aunt and the others to Beijing. The younger brother she had with her second husband was a complete troublemaker. Not only were his grades poor, but he also caused lots of trouble everywhere, getting into fights and costing them a lot of money in compensation. When they made him work in an electronics factory, he actually stole from there to sell and ended up in jail. After he got out, he didn't find a job, living off his parents instead. My biological mother paid a lot of money for his wife, but when he drank and drove her away, all the dowry money was wasted. If this had happened years ago, I might have felt pleasure. But now, having seen a greater world and a wider realm, the disturbance at the bottom of a well in a remote corner is nothing more than a discordant noise.